Hello students, we will continue with the digestive system. So we were discussing about the esophagus that leads to the stomach. Now we'll see something related to stomach. A muscular sphincter gastroesophageal regulates the opening of esophagus into the stomach. So there is a sphincter. Sphincter means it is a ring-shaped muscles that it may relax or it may tighten in order to open or close a passage or opening in the body. It is a ring-shaped muscle that tightens or that relaxes in order to open or close a passage or an opening in the body. So that sphincter that is called as gastroesophageal. It regulates the opening of the esophagus into the stomach. The stomach, located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, has four major parts: a cardiac portion into which the esophagus opens, a fundic region, body, a main central region, and a pyloric portion which opens into the first part of small intestine. So here a stomach has four portions, and the stomach is located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity. It has four major parts. A cardiac portion, that portion is into which the esophagus opens. A fundic region, the main central region is called the body, and a pyloric portion into which that leads into the small intestine. Stomach leads to the small intestine leads to the large intestine. Okay, now we'll see about the small intestine. Small intestine is distinguishable into three regions: a C-shaped duodenum, a long coiled middle portion jejunum, and a highly coiled ileum. So the small intestine is also divided into three portions. The first portion is called a C-shaped duodenum. It leads to a long coiled middle portion called a jejunum, and jejunum leads to a highly coiled structure called ileum. The opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by the pyloric sphincter. So again, the opening of the stomach into the duodenum. Duodenum is the first portion of the small intestine. That is also guarded by a sphincter called a pyloric sphincter. Ileum opens into large intestine. So the last portion of the small intestine, ileum, that opens into the large intestine. It consists of cecum, colon, and rectum. So again, this large intestine is divided into three portions: cecum, colon, and rectum. Cecum is a small blind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. So it is called as a small blind sac because sac means it looks like a sac, and so you can see that it has sphincters at the ileocecal junction, and it remains closed and is invisible. Okay, cecum is called a small blind sac because sac means it looks like a sac, and at the ileocecal junction it has sphincters that remains closed and it is invisible. That is what it is called as a blind sac. Okay, and it hosts some microorganisms, symbiotic microorganisms. A narrow finger-like tubular projection, the vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ, arises from the cecum. So it is from the cecum that the vermiform appendix is a narrow finger-like tubular projection. It is like a finger-like tubular projection, and that is called as vermiform appendix. It arises from the cecum. This is a vestigial organ. Vestigial organ means this organ is having no function and it has become useless or reduced in size because of its evolutionary changes. From the ancestral changes, this has become reduced. This is having no function in the human body. The vermiform appendix is having no function in the human body. Cecum opens into the colon. The colon is divided into four parts: an ascending, a transverse, descending part, and a sigmoid colon. So the first portion called a cecum, it leads to the colon. Colon is divided into four portions: an ascending, transverse, descending, and a sigmoid colon. The descending part opens into the rectum, which opens out through the anus. So the descending part, it opens into the rectum that opens out through the anus. Okay. We will also see the pictures. So here you can see that. We will again describe that paragraph. So in the case of stomach, the opening of the esophagus into the stomach is regulated by a sphincter, gastroesophageal sphincter, and the stomach is located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, and it has mainly four portions. The portion into which the esophagus opens, that is called as the cardiac portion, then a fundic region, and the main central region is called the body, and the pyloric portion that opens into the first part of the small intestine. So the stomach leads to the small intestine. The small intestine is again divided into three portions. The first is called a C-shaped duodenum. It leads to a long coiled middle portion called jejunum, and then this jejunum leads to a highly coiled portion called ileum. So the opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by the pyloric sphincter. Then the ileum, the last portion of the small intestine, leads to the large intestine. Okay, and the large intestine consists of three portions called cecum, colon, and rectum. So cecum is a small blind sac, and it hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. And there is also a small narrow finger-like projection, tubular projection, called a vermiform appendix, arises from the cecum. This is a vestigial organ, meaning this is having no function, and it is reduced in function because of the evolutionary changes. And then the cecum, it opens into the colon. The colon is divided into four portions: an ascending portion, a transverse, descending, and a sigmoid colon. And the descending column, it opens into the rectum, and it opens out through the anus. Okay. So in this here you can see the different types of teeth here. The arrangement of different types of teeth in the jaws on one side and the sockets on the other side. Here the dental formula was 2, 1, 2, 3. So there are two incisors. Here there are two incisors, one canine, two premolars, and three molars. So one here, this is the incisor, this is the canine, this is the premolar, and this is the molar. This is premolar, incisors, canines. Okay. So we'll see the stomach portion. So this is the esophagus. It leads to the This is the esophagus. It leads to the cardiac portion. Here you can see the fundic portion, and the main central cavity is called the body, and it opens out through the pyloric portion. This is the superior portion of the duodenum. Okay. then esophagus, it leads to the stomach. From this stomach, there you can see this C-shaped structure called a duodenum. The C-shaped structure called duodenum that leads to the middle portion called jejunum. Here you can see the jejunum, and then the highly cold structure called a ileum that leads to the large intestine. The large intestine is divided into cecum, colon and rectum. Here you can see the cecum, and from the cecum there you can see the spermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ. Okay, and the cecum hosts microorganisms, symbiotic. From the cecum there comes the colon. This is the ascending colon. This is the transverse colon. Here you can see the descending colon, then the sigmoid colon. The descending colon opens into the rectum that opens out through the anus. So all the pictures are very important. Okay. Then we'll see the wall of the alimentary canal from esophagus to rectum possesses 4 layers, namely serosa, muscularis, submucosa and mucosa. This is also described with the help of a picture, and we'll see that later. So we'll see the wall alimentary about the alimentary canal, and the wall of the alimentary canal from the esophagus to the rectum, it possesses 4 layers, and these are named as serosa, muscularis, submucosa and mucosa. Serosa is the outermost layer and is made up of thin mesothelium, epithelium of visceral organs with some connective tissue. So the outermost layer is called serosa, and this is made up of thin mesothelium with some connective tissue. Okay. So the visceral organs include lungs, heart, organs of the digestive system, excretory system, reproductive and circulatory system. These are termed as visceral organs. And epithelium means this is a thin tissue forming the outer portion of the body surface and the lining of the alimentary canal. Okay. The epithelium of this visceral organ, the epithelium is the thin tissue forming the outer layer of the alimentary canal, and that epithelium of these visceral organs are called mesothelium, and along with some connective tissue, that is serosa. Muscularis is formed by smooth muscles usually arranged into an inner circular and an outer longitudinal layer. So the second layer is called muscularis. This is formed of smooth muscles, and this is arranged in 2 layers in an inner circular and an outer longitudinal layer. An oblique muscle layer may be present in some regions, and this muscle layer is responsible for creating motion that churns and that physically breaks down the food. The submucosal layer is formed of loose connective tissue containing nerves, blood and lymph vessels. So the third region is the submucosal layer. This is made up of loose connective tissue, and this layer contains nerves, blood vessels and lymph vessels. So connective tissues are the tissues that connects, supports, binds or separates other tissues or organs. In duodenum, glands are also present in submucosa. So in the duodenum, glands are also present in submucosa. The innermost layer lining the lumen of the alimentary canal is the mucosa. So the innermost layer is called a mucosa. This layer forms irregular fold in the stomach and small finger-like foldings called villi in the small intestine. So this layer forms irregular fold called a rhoca in the stomach and small finger-like foldings called villi in the small intestine. The cells lining the villi produce numerous microscopic projections called microvilli giving a brush border appearance. And the villi inside produce small finger-like projections. Numerous microscopic projections called a microvilli giving a brush border appearance. So this is the picture. Here you can see the outermost layer is called a serosa. The second layer is called a muscularis. This is divided into an inner circular and an outer longitudinal layer. That third layer is called a submucosa. This is the third layer, and here you can see the mucosa, and this is the lumen. Okay. So we'll again see that paragraph. So the alimentary canal, the wall of the alimentary canal from the esophagus till the rectum, that possesses 4 layers, and these layers are called serosa, muscularis, submucosa and mucosa. The outermost layer is called serosa. This is made up of mesothelium and some connective tissues. Mesothelium means that is the epithelium of visceral organs. Visceral organs include heart, lungs, the organs of digestive, excretory systems, reproductive system, circulatory system, etc. And epithelium means that is the thin tissue forming the outer layer of the alimentary canal. So that is what is called as mesothelium, the epithelium of the visceral organs. All this visceral organ is called a mesothelium, and this is made up of mesothelium and some connective tissue. Connective tissue helps to connect, bind, support tissues and organs. Okay, so that is about serosa. Then the second layer is called a muscularis. That is made up of smooth muscles, and these are arranged in 2 layers, an inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer. So in some regions, some muscle layer, maybe oblique muscle layer may be present, and this muscle layer helps in the churning motion that helps to physically break down the food. And comes the third portion called a submucosa. This is also formed of loose connective tissue, and this submucosa layer has nerves, blood vessels and lymph vessels. And in the case of duodenum, lymph glands are also present in submucosa. And the last portion or the innermost layer of this of the lumen is called a mucosa. Okay, the innermost portion of this lining of the lumen is called mucosa. And in the case of stomach, it is different in the case of stomach and intestine, small intestine. In the case of stomach, this forms irregular fold that is called as rugae. And in the case of small intestine, it produces small finger-like foldings called a villi. And the cells lining this villi produce numerous microvilli, and the cells lining this villi produce numerous projections called the microvilli, giving this a brush border appearance. Okay, so that is about that page.